More than a decade ago, I traveled with my wife Ariella's family to Lithuania to visit the shtetl from where her family came. We hired a tour guide, a member of the modern Lithuanian Jewish community, to help us find the graves of distant loved ones, people whom we never met, but whose legacies were carried forward in the names of the living, passed down through the generations. Arriving in the town of Skopishuk, still there, still tiny, was like being transported into the past. Little homes with gated vegetable gardens, a town square, and just on the edge of town, a mossed-over cemetery. It was a warm summer day, but standing thigh-deep in the overgrown weeds, I felt every season. The long-gone shtetl life blurred against the picture of 5 modern Jews, one from Lithuania, 4 born in the United States, but raised with the stories and names of family members who made the journey from that town to America's shores. Those family members carried with them very little material, but they had endlessly rich family traditions, stories, and those values that they brought with them shaped our lives. In that moment, I was reminded that the lives we live today are not entirely our own. We share them with the legacies of those who came before us. Whether generations removed or a recent, still painful loss, we carry the blessings and the burden of living for those who are no longer with us, those who enriched our past, and in doing so, are shaping our future. Since last Yom Kippur, far too many of us have lost someone we love, and the restrictions of the pandemic have magnified our grief by forcing us to mourn at a distance, without that physical comfort that friends and family can bring as they pack into a living room to pray and tell stories of the person that we loved and lost. But one thing we know about loss, it's not a static experience. In the immediate aftermath of losing someone, the grief we experience can be utterly overwhelming. It can bury us beneath a heavy layer of darkness and create a profound sense of isolation. But over time, the memories that can bring such profound sadness in the early days of a loss, they can transform into a source of laughter and love. Recalling a loved one's particular habits, a sense of humor can bring a smile to our face. I often think of my grandmother, the hardships that she overcame, the sacrifices that she made. They motivate me to achieve. I think of that one family friend that died years ago. His good-heartedness, his commitment to his community, his unwavering sense of justice, it became a measuring stick for me in how I live my life. When they pass, our loved ones' legacies become ours to guard, to honor, to emulate. There are certain moments in which we feel the sting of loss. This Yizkor service, slated at the end of a powerful and exhausting day of prayer and reflection, this is one of those occasions. But it's not just Yizkor when we feel the pain of loss. It's also at a simcha, a joyful family event, a bat mitzvah, a graduation, a marriage, a birth, any time in which we know that that loved one would have loved to have been there, and we would have loved to have had them there. Yet their absence, while painful, also has a way of heightening the significance of that moment, urging us to drink it in, to savor it. And so we think of their memory, and we dance a little more, and we sing a little more. We clap a little more, and we hug a little more, and we celebrate a little more. And we do so in their honor because even though we miss them dearly, we also know that we are carrying on in their name. Because it's a hard thing to mourn and celebrate at separate times. Life is too fast. Many of us are familiar with the famous passage from Ecclesiastes, "To everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under the heavens." The Israeli poet Yehuda Amichai had a different take on that. In his poem, A Man in His Life, Yehuda Amichai wrote, "A person doesn't have time in his life to have a time for everything. We do not have seasons enough to have seasons for everything." Ecclesiastes was wrong about that. We need to love and hate at the same moment, to laugh and cry with the same eyes, with the same hands to throw stones and to gather them, to make love in war and war in love, to hate, to forgive, and to remember and forget. And so it is with living. We mourn and we dance. We say Kaddish in the morning and we celebrate the next evening. We carry memories of loved ones that can be at one moment heartbreaking and at the next moment inspiring. And this, my friends, is the essence of Yizkor, this thing called memory. It is not meant to be locked away only to be taken out at special moments. It is packed within us, side by side with our daily thoughts. We bump into it at random moments, jogging loose the memories of the past, both painful and beautiful, that also remind us to live in the present. Memory lives side by side with our daily to-do list. It is waiting there in the chair next to us at the appointment. It is behind us, lurking over our shoulders in the store. When we see that brand of coffee that our loved one used to buy, when we hear a particular song on the radio, when a forgotten photo appears unexpectedly on our phone, memory walks with us in the present, and it guides us into the future. When we allow memory to intertwine itself into our present, our everyday, we keep the beauty and legacy of our loved ones alive. We link their soul with our soul. We make their memory a blessing through the mundane and the holy ways in which we live our lives, for they inspire our every step. Yet still, standing here on this bima this afternoon, I am struck that there is something particularly unsettling about this moment. Offering a Yizkor sermon to an empty sanctuary is strange and poignant. It underscores the pain that loss brings. The void. The empty place in our heart that cracks open when we lose a loved one. Yizkor is not meant to be observed virtually. We do so this year in the service of the holy task of staying safe and saving lives. But we long for that day when we can once again comfort each other with our presence. When we hear the soft crying of a congregant behind us, and we reach behind, we offer a tissue and a hand in comfort. God, how we long to be together for these Yizkor moments. And for me, and so many of us, the strangeness of this afternoon is not only about the emptiness of this sanctuary. It's about the profound absence of this bima. God, how I miss Alan and Morley. Rabbis Freeling and Feinstein guided this community for generations. They buried our loved ones. They offered us comfort in moments of pain. They stood up here in their regal white robes year after year, and they prayed for peace and strength, even in the face of sorrow. Standing on this bima with them, I often felt like a child among giants. In memory, I can feel Rabbi Freeling's large hand on my back during Avinu Malkeinu. I can hear Rabbi Feinstein's voice in all that we do. They were my teachers and they were my friends, and I miss their presence. This Yizkor sermon slot on Yom Kippur, the opportunity to offer words of comfort, that always belonged to Rabbi Feinstein. Often his words would make us cry. Some years his words would make himself cry. And every year after the sermon, he would sit down. We would bump fists, and he would notice a tear in my eye. I would assure him that I was not crying just some Purell on my hands that irritated my eye, a believable story for this germaphobe. But it was never true. And Morley knew it. And he would smile. I miss that warm, sometimes mischievous smile. I miss his guidance and his teachings, his steadfast support for each and every member of our community. But even as I mourn, I know Morley and Alan's spirits walk with me. They walk with all of us in the present, and it's inspiring our collective and individual futures. The very best way we can honor their legacy and the memories of all the loved ones that we have lost is to live our lives by their values, the lessons that they taught us by their examples, how they lived their lives. Morley's love of Torah. How will we study in his honor in this coming year? Alan's commitment to justice. How will we fight for right in his honor in this coming year? Morley's love of Israel. How will we commit to our own Zionism in this coming year? Their loss is a heavy weight on our hearts, but it is also a light that propels us forward and encourages us to do the most with our life that we are given, to find joy, to pursue peace, to work hard, and to give back. Like the ribbon that we tear when a loved one dies, the fabric of our lives will never be completely whole again after a profound loss. But it can be rich. It can be beautiful. It can be guided by their legacy. Because indeed, the capacity to hold loss and brokenness side by side with joy in our hearts, it's at the very center of an ancient midrash about the broken tablets of the Ten Commandments. After Moses destroyed the first set in anger and went back up to the mountain to receive the second set anew, tradition asks, what did we do with those broken tablets? Did we bury them in the desert? Discard them so that we could forget about the sin that we committed with the golden calf? No. We swept them up and brought them with us. They lived side by side with the new set in the Holy Ark as we journeyed that long road through the desert to the Holy Land of Promise. One set broken, one set whole, one set reminding us of our shattered past, and one set reminding us of our hopeful future. And this is how we move forward after the brokenness of loss. Each of us is a holy ark, and we hold within us wholeness and brokenness, laughter and sorrow, pain and promise. The desperate yearning to share just one more hug with our beloved, nestled up against the promise of a future inspired by their memory. We never forget those loved ones who left an imprint on our soul. Whether they left us long ago or in recent days, we will never forget the sound of their voice, the way emotions played on their face, or the embrace of their arms. We do not leave these moments to fade away in the dust of the past. Instead, we carry them into the light of tomorrow. We conjure up these memories when we are in need of comfort and strength, and we conjure them up now during this holy service of Yizkor, to remind us that a future without memory is a future without a soul, to remind us how to live by their legacies, to remind us that our lives are not our own to live. We live for the ancestors that came from across the ocean, and we live for the loved ones who died in this past year. One day soon, we will gather in person once more. We will cry a little with each other, embrace one another, and share stories of the ones that we have lost. But until that day, and for many years in the future, we will be comforted by the memories of those that we loved, those whose lives inspire our lives today. Zichronam livracha, to the ones who passed away in the shtetl long ago, to the ones who passed away in this past year. May their memories be for a blessing. May our lives honor their memories as we walk together through the gates of yet another year.